composition project. So this is for the grade 12s, and we're going to go through the kind of the instructions and getting you started anyway on this composition project, because well, you might get confused when you first read through the instructions, and if we take it step by step, it might not be as bad as you think. Just a quick reminder that if you are choosing to do this composition project, it's because you're not doing your own song as your final performance, and you're not playing a cover track or song with 4 tracks in it. You've chosen to do a cover song or just you singing, and therefore you are now doing this composition project as the other part. In your slides, there'll be a slide here, and this will be a video tutorial. It's not there right now because I'm actually creating it right now. It might be a little dry and boring, but if you watch it and go through this tutorial, you will hopefully understand how to get started with this. So here are some instructions. You're going to use, number 1, a flat template for your composition that will be found in Google Classroom. So you'll go in Google Classroom, you'll find one called Grade 12 Final Composition. And that's what the file you're going to use to go into. And then, number 2, you're going to modify the template as you need. And it's going to be 20 to 24 measures in length. That doesn't really matter right now because it always adds measures as you finish one. So we won't worry about that, but just make sure you finish your composition with about, well, between 20 and 24 measures. And here's the stuff you have to kind of pay attention to is all of these items that should be included. Okay, so you can use any combination of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chords of your chosen key. Meaning you're going to choose a key, your favorite key, D major, F major, G major, A flat, B, whatever it is, C, and you can use any of the chords generated from that scale. But like it says here, for best success, try a pattern of chords that repeats. Because pop songs often take 4 chords and repeat them over and over. So don't just randomly go, oh, I think I'll go with a 1, a 3, 4, 6, 4, 5, 2, 3, 1, 4, 5, 2, 3. Like there's no pattern there, right? But if you're like 1, 6, 2, 5, and so on, and then you might break that pattern every so often. But if you keep on repeating that, first of all, it'll be easier to do because you can copy your bars over, or B, you have less choice, and that's sometimes good. As part of that, your composition should include the following types of chords. Okay, so it has to have a 1 major 7 chord. We did that in the theory stuff. It has to have a 4 minor 7 chord. And a 5 augmented chord. So that means that somewhere in the composition, you're going to have a 4 chord. So in C major, follow my line of thinking, C major, the 4 chord is F, right? Because C, D, E, F, 1, 2, 3, 4. F is your chord, but then it's got to be an F minor 7 chord. So you're going to figure that out, and you're going to include that somewhere in your composition. Just like the 5 augmented. Well, in C major, C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The G chord is the 5th chord, and it's going to be a G augmented chord. You're going to include that in your composition. Next, the first and the last bar of the composition should be a 1 chord, and that's because the 1 chord is that home. It's the chord that your ear longs to hear as the center of that key. And when you hear that, you kind of feel like, I've settled home. D, you will include 3 different types of instruments in your composition. So one instrument will be the melody, maybe a string instrument like a violin, and the other 2 will play chord notes. So like if your chord is C, E, G, the C major chord, C, E, G, then your other 2 instruments are going to certainly be playing the C, E, and the G. And you can repeat different Gs in there and E's and C's, but you're going to mix those up. I'll go through this and show you a demo. And then lastly, the melody notes can be any notes from the scale of your key. So for that melody instrument, the string, the violin, it's going to play any note from the scale of your key, C major, for example. But then the little subnote is the majority of the notes in your melody in the bar should be from the chord below it. So in order to have more success, if your chord was like C, E, and G, those 3 notes, your melody should have most of those notes, or you should be using those mostly in the bar. But then to make it interesting, you can stray from those notes, but just come back and just make sure you're using those notes mostly, majority of the time. And the last point, use a variety of rhythm patterns for your melody notes. You may be asking yourself, how am I going to remember what all these chords are that I have to include in this composition? And you have that list and everything. You should create yourself like a legend, you know, so that you can, as you're entering notes into flat, you don't have to rethink everything through. You've done the work once. All you have to do is kind of start inputting notes. And so you're going to create yourself a template. You're going to, once you pick your favorite key, right? I'm going to use D major as an example. So in the key of D, I'm going to do my pre-work in terms of figuring out the chords, and I'm going to write them on a piece of paper. Let's look at what that looks like right now. So I'm going to pick the key of D. I'm going to start over here. I'm going to write D. I look up on my key signature. Of course, I taught you how to figure out your key signature, so you're even happier now that I taught that. But F sharp, C sharp are the two sharps in this key. So to help me out, I'm going to make sure I have my D major scale written out. And for extra bonus value, let's write out the numbers of these notes to help us out. So I did say you can use the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, and the 6 chord. Let's figure this out. The 1 chord is D, F sharp, A. The 2 chord, E, G, and B. 3 chord, I'm just going to do this quickly. I'm not talking through it. Gonna make sure I don't make a mistake for you. So those are my 6 chords. But I also said that you had to include some other things, specific chords. So that's gonna be like my one, I had to have a 1 major 7 chord. So you would go back through your notes, how do I do that? And you'd figure it out. I'm just gonna write the notes out here. I know I had to have a 4 minor 7 chord. Okay, so I take my 4, it's a G, and I figure out what the G minor 7 is. Make sure I know that's a natural. And then the 5 augmented was the other one. So I go to my 5 and I make sure I have a 5 augmented chord. Great. So I've kind of done my pre-work now, right? So now I'm gonna have this beside me as I work in flat. And I'm like, okay, if I need a 4 chord, there it is. Perfect. I'll be so thankful I did this in advance. So let's go to flat. This is going to be your file, and you need to modify it. So if you remember all the points, remember we said 3 different instruments. Well, here's one. So let's say we use a piano, but we might want to add 2 more. So to add more instruments, we're going to go to this little piano here near the top left. Click on that and we can manage the instruments. Great. So I'm going to say add an instrument, and we're going to add a string, which is violin HQ high quality, not headquarters. And I'm going to slide that violin above the piano just because it's a melody. We're going to keep it up there so we always know where that is. And the last instrument we'll add is a plucked string. We'll use an electric bass. And so now we have our 3 instruments. I mean, you could add more if you want to, but we'll stop with that. Done. All right, so here we are. We are with 3 instruments, and we said we can use any combination of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 chord, except that we had to include 3 specific types of chords at some point. All right, so we're also going to choose our key. So we're going to go to the measure menu somewhere in the top here, and that will bring up the key signature button, which looks like a key signature. Go figure. So we click on that, and we're going to choose the key of D major. So that's F sharp and C sharp. Once you select your key signature, it's there, and you can see it for all of your instruments. Great. So that's all set. We have our chord chart that we've made on a piece of paper to help us, and we can start creating a pattern. The first chord we know has to be the 1 chord in D, which is the D major chord. So you might not know, like, okay, well, what am I going to do for the piano and so on? So I'm going to give you a sample. For example, I'm going to put the D chord in here. And sorry about that. Delete that. Great. So now that I've done that, it's there, but it's still not very interesting. So I'm going to go up to the note tab up here, and I'm going to change that to a half note. Then I'm going to put another half note chord. Great. So now I have that pattern going, right? So I can use that pattern. I'll just reuse that same rhythm pattern because it's the violin that's going to have its own kind of melody and rhythm and so on. All right. So maybe the left hand here plays a, I'm going to select that again. Maybe that plays a whole note. And the bass player is going to play a pattern. Let's see. Oops. Always on the D, for example, because that's the name of the chord. But I'm just going to make this one pattern. Now, if you learn the shortcuts, for example, to make a quarter note, that's the 3 on your keyboard. So you, let's look. We're going to repeat this chord twice. So D. So I want to go back. That's going to be a quarter note. So I hit 3. I go over here. The 8th note is a 4, so I can hit D. I should actually hit the 4 before. So, and now I'm going to hit 3 for quarter note, D, and then 4 for 8th note, and so on. So I'm going to repeat that same type of pattern. And here, over here, let's see, the half note is a 2, right? So we're going to go over here, hit 2, and put this chord. Then in the bass, we're going to hit 1 for whole note. There. So let's hit play. I'm going to just select this first beat, hit play. All right, so far so good. Now let's make a pattern of chords first before we add melody. So I chose a 1-1 pattern. Now let's go to a 2 chord. So the 2 chord, we have our chart that we've made, and we don't have to figure it out. I know it's a E, G, and B. So let's write that in here. So I want half note, so that's a 2 on my keyboard. Do that twice. I'm going to hit 1 for whole note, and sometimes that doesn't seem to work. There, 1. And then I'm going to select down here and put an E for the bass. So that's a 3 for the quarter note, E, 4 for 8th notes, 3, 4. Like if you learn those keyboard shortcuts, it goes a lot faster. And then let's put a 4 chord here. So in a key of D, that's a G chord. So I'm going to click here, hit 2 for half notes. I'm going to even invert that just to keep it a little bit interesting. Put it down here, 1 and a G. Whoop. So when you add notes and it fills the bar, it always adds more. That's why it keeps on jumping around. But we'll forgive the program. Okay, and then down here you click, and we're going to put a G here. So 3 for a quarter note, then 4 for your 8s, 3 for a quarter, 4 for the 8s. So let's go back, click on that first beat, press play. Now, maybe I want to repeat that because that's like a pattern that would repeat. So I would go here, and by all means, if you can figure out how to copy and paste, okay, so they're right there. So if I go to click on, maybe I have to click on measure, I don't know. I'm going to click on that first one, hold my shift key, click on the last one. There, now I have those. And if I say copy up here, if I click on the treble clef here, if I say paste, will it work? Yes, it did. All right, so I've just repeated it. I don't have to re-enter that. Let's do that with the bass notes here. Hold the first one. Now the shift key is down. Hold the last one. Say copy up here. Make sure I select the bass down here and say paste. Let's do that with the bass clef notes of the piano. Perfect. I never bothered learning copy and paste in flat, but now I know. And so that's great. And you'll notice the tab is written here automatically for you. You don't have to really worry about it. But, oh, actually, I did. I wonder why the rhythm changed. I changed it around. My bad. But that's okay. We'll leave it like that. Now, I'm going to give you a hint here. So the fourth chord of the fourth bar here was, sorry, the chord of the fourth bar was the 4 chord, right? And one of the chords that you had to include was a 4 minor 7. So I'm actually going to use a 4 minor 7 in this 8th bar because it's the second time we've repeated the pattern. Now let's just try to change it around. So to make a 7th chord, I write in my notes and I make sure I change them as I need to. So I go to the note tab up here. One has to be a flat. The top note has to be natural. And I think I got that right. Let's add in our F here. So notice how this the B became natural again. I have to make sure I keep it as a flat. The F should be natural again. All right, so if I go back to the beginning, press play. All right, so we've got that in. Now let's add the melody notes. So if you recall in the instructions, I'll go back to it. It says melody notes can be any notes from the scale of a key. However, the majority of the notes should be from the chord in the bar. So let's go back here. The chord in the bar in the first bar is D, F sharp, and A. So the majority of my notes for the first 2 bars is going to be D, F sharp, and A. But I can use other notes. And I'm going to create a rhythm. Let's start on the second beat here. Start with 8th notes, which is number 4. Put a quarter note here. I'm just adding some random stuff. A rest there, and then maybe, oops, go to the next beat there. Some 8th notes. Maybe on this, I'm going to make that a half note. And then over here, let's change this to make that 8th note. A half note with a rest. So I might want to repeat that kind of note pattern again. So I'm going to select those, say copy, I'm going to paste them down here and paste. Now there is a problem, right? Because I changed the chord. In the 4th bar, it's a 4 chord. In the 8th bar, I made it a minor chord. So I have to make sure that like for example, the B is now flat. So I have to click up here and make that a flat. If I don't do that, I'm not quite reflecting the chord change. So let's try going to the top, clicking on the first beat, hitting play. All right, so is that all right? It's okay. I would almost be prone. I don't know if I like that combination of notes. I'm going to try something different. I'm going to slide this down to an A or even a G. How about that? So I'm going to just start at the bar 5 and press play. All right, so not bad. So you'll notice, I don't know if, or actually maybe you noticed this, when we first played it without the melody, that 8th bar sounds a little bit funny. We're just a little bit off, right? Having that minor 7 chord there. But as soon as we put in some melody notes, it kind of validated the chord. And so that just shows that the whole group, the bass player, the piano player, and the violin player together make better music than just one of the parts isolated. Now, I'm not saying solo piano is not good. Hey, I'm a piano player. Solo piano is awesome. And a bass player can sound great on their own too, though they typically don't just play on their own. But when you mix all those together, they all kind of work together in harmony. Haha, that's music for you. Okay, so I've just done 8 bars. You still have to do 20 to 24 in total. And we just repeated this pattern, except changed the last one of the pattern. And now I might do a different pattern, repeat that twice, and so on. So if you do 4-bar patterns, and you do the math here, 20 to 24 measures, if you do 20 measures in total at 4-bar patterns, that's 5 times through some sort of pattern. You have 5 patterns. Or if you do 24 measures, that's 6. So maybe you do like pattern 1 is repeated, and then you have a middle that's repeated, and you go back to pattern 1. That's going to be up to you. But don't just copy and paste your melody all the time. Like, change it up. If you have that middle pattern, the middle section, you might want to change the rhythm and make something different, right? Now, this is just a snippet of a composition. Like, normally songs aren't that short, but it just gives you a sense of understanding how composers do approach this process. Okay, so the important part, let's just review that, is to make sure that you've checked off all these things. I would recommend that you do the pre-work on a piece of paper first, so that you have your work ready for you and you don't have to figure it out when you're on flat and say, oh, what was that chord again? You know which one it is. Okay, and then when you're done, you're going to submit it. It'll have a turn in button. It doesn't have it for me because I'm the teacher. And that's it. I hope this helps you. Again, this might not have been the most invigorating video of all time, but hopefully it helps guide you and get you started. Thanks for listening.